I will welcome you all to our brand new Real Inside YouTube channel. We are kicking things off not just with any TV series, but with one of the best thriller series ever made. This is the story. There's a serial killer on the loose. And this isn't just any serial killer, there's a specific pattern to these murders. One by one, people are getting killed. Who is this killer? Why are they killing? What's the reason behind all this? Nobody knows, not even the police have a clue. And that's where this series begins. From the very first episode, you'll be completely hooked. It's the kind of series where you just keep watching one episode after another, and once you're done, it will still haunt you for months. With a total of 20 episodes, this super intense Korean TV series is called Mouse. Today, I'm bringing you episode 1. After watching this first episode, I hope you all drop a good feedback about both the episode and our new channel. Based on your feedback, I will bring the next episodes as soon as possible. So make sure to subscribe to Real Inside, and don't forget to click the bell icon. Otherwise, you might miss out on this insane serial killer story. Now, let's jump into episode 1 and see what happens. So, right at the beginning of this series, we see a group of little kids visiting the zoo with their teacher. At this moment, the kids are all standing in front of a glass box, staring at a dangerous snake inside. Then, suddenly, one kid from the group takes a mouse out of his bag and drops it inside the glass box. He just stands there, watching with excitement as the snake devours the mouse. At this point, you realize this kid has a seriously twisted mind. Now, why do you think the series starts by showing a kid like this? Well, as you keep watching, you'll understand everything. Then after that, we see a scene in the middle of the night. A young girl named Zoe is standing alone on the road. After a while, another little girl walks up to her and tells her that she was traveling with her father, but they met with an accident. She asks Zoe to come and help, so Zoe goes with this little girl to the accident site. But what happens next is something no one expects. Suddenly, a man appears, attacks Zoe, and kills her on the spot. Then a few days later, we see another shocking event: a swimming training center where they discover a naked, headless female corpse. When the police arrive to investigate, they find out that the dead body belongs to Zoe, the girl who had gone missing just a day before. As I mentioned earlier, the head of the body is still missing. On top of that, there is a strange code carved into the body. Because of this pattern, the police suspect that this murder is the 17th killing by the infamous serial killer known as Headhunter. At this crime scene, we also meet Detective Park, but there's something personal for him: his own daughter is missing. Detective Park receives information that his daughter was kidnapped by none other than Headhunter himself. Because of this, Detective Park is now desperate to find out everything about this ruthless serial killer. Who is he? Why is he killing people in this pattern? What's the meaning behind these murders? At this point, the police still have no answers. And because of that, people are panicking and they are losing trust in both the police and the government. Now at this point, we're introduced to another important character in this series, Professor Lee. Right now, he's giving a lecture at the university about serial killers when suddenly he gets a call from the Prime Minister of Korea. The Prime Minister tells Professor Lee to come to Korea immediately. But why? Well, the Korean government is trying to pass a very unusual law. Let me explain. They want to introduce a system where a pregnant mother has to undergo a DNA test on her unborn child. This test would determine what kind of person that child will grow up to be. Basically, they can analyze the fetus's DNA and check if it carries psychopathic genes. If the child is found to have these genes, the law would allow the government to terminate the pregnancy before birth. Now, the reason they're pushing for this law is because of the terrifying serial killer known as Headhunter. The government believes that if this kind of test had existed earlier, they could have stopped him from being born in the first place. Now, the reason they're pushing for this law is because of the terrifying serial killer known as Headhunter. The government believes that if this kind of test had existed earlier, they could have stopped him from being born in the first place. They think that by passing this law, they can prevent future serial killers before they even come into the world. However, there's a catch. The accuracy of this DNA test is 99%. That means there is still a 1% chance that a child could have been completely normal, but the test would still label them as a potential psychopath. And guess who has to conduct this test? Professor Lee. That's exactly why the Prime Minister called him. He needs to come back and oversee this process. Now, after this, the Korean government holds a vote to see how many people agree with this new law. They want to know if the majority is in favor of passing it. But here's the twist when the final vote is being cast. It's up to none other than the President of Korea himself. And here's where things get personal. His own wife is pregnant. As a father-to-be, the president thinks about his own unborn child. He realizes that if this law passes, parents like him could be forced into making impossible choices. So at the very last moment, the president votes against the law, rejecting it completely. Then after that, we're introduced to another important character in this series, Dr. Han. Dr. Han is a neurologist, a specialist in brain-related studies. His wife's name is Kim, and right now, she's pregnant. Now, remember Professor Lee, who just arrived in Korea? Well, he and Dr. Han are actually best friends. Since he's back in Korea, Professor Lee decides to visit Dr. Han. But here's something interesting. Dr. Han was previously married to Professor Lee's younger sister, Jennifer. However, 7 years ago, something tragic happened. Jennifer was murdered. Someone attacked her and took her life. But who killed her? How did it happen, and why? That's something you'll find out as you keep watching the series. Now, during their conversation, Professor Lee brings up the new law the government is trying to pass. Dr. Han, however, is strongly in favor of this law. He believes it should be approved. After this, the two of them have dinner together, talk for a while, and then leave. Dr. Han is the one who drives Professor Lee back to his hotel and drops him off there. So after that, they show a family coming for a night camp. This group, along with some others, is trying to set up a night camp, but since they can't find the right path, they end up getting lost. Among them are two young boys, one named Kumuchi and his older brother, Vaughn. Actually, today is Kumuchi's birthday. His parents think about canceling the trip and going back home, but Kumuchi refuses. He insists that they must do the night camp. Then, Kumuchi's dad steps out of the car and asks someone on the road for the exact directions to the campsite. But after walking for some time, they realize they've gone in the wrong direction. Despite this, because of Kumuchi's stubbornness, the group decides to camp right where they are. Later, Kumuchi's mom goes to a nearby spring to fetch some water, but when she takes too long to return, Kumuchi's dad also goes to check on her. And this is where something terrifying happens. The notorious serial killer known as Headhunter appears and attacks Kumuchi's mom. Since Kumuchi's dad arrives at that moment, the killer shifts focus and brutally murders him first. Kumuchi's terrified mother runs back toward their van and tells Vaughn, "Take care of your little brother and stay inside. No matter what happens, don't open the door." She locks the van from the outside and rushes off. The headhunter who killed Kumuchi's father walks here and kills Kumuchi's mother, and then the headhunter comes this vehicle. But soon, headhunter arrives at the van. He tries to get inside, but the vehicle is locked. Determined, he smashes the glass and forcefully enters. Meanwhile, Vaughn and Kumuchi are hiding inside, scared to death. But Kumuchi is too frightened, and a small sound escapes from his hiding spot. To protect his little brother, Vaughn comes out of hiding. Headhunter, showing no mercy, ruthlessly attacks Vaughn, but suddenly, police sirens are heard, and Headhunter flees the scene. The police arrive and find the dead bodies of a woman and a man, but both of their heads are missing. The police immediately suspect this as another one of Headhunter's brutal murders. Meanwhile, Vaughn is severely injured and taken to the hospital. Now, Detective Park enters the case. He believes that Headhunter might have kidnapped another girl, so he visits the hospital to gather information. But the only witness left now is Kumuchi, who is too terrified to speak. Then suddenly, Kumuchi sees a poster on the hospital wall and starts screaming, "The person in the poster, it's him. The one who killed his parents, and guess what? That person is none other than Dr. Han." Now the police start investigating Dr. Han's house. But they find nothing, no murder weapon, no evidence. Meanwhile, Kumuchi arrives at Dr. Han's house in a police vehicle. He is furious. He's convinced that Dr. Han is the one who killed his parents. Kumuchi picks up an iron rod and tries to attack him, but Dr. Han pushes the little boy away. In Dr. Han's garden, there are several snowman-like sculptures. As Kumuchi falls, he crashes into one of them, and then something horrifying happens. The head of the snowman falls off, revealing a black bag inside. The police check the bag, and inside, they find Kumuchi's mother's head. Shocked, the police examine the other snow sculptures, and inside them, they find Kumuchi's father's head as well. Now the police confront Dr. Han. "How did these heads end up inside your snow sculptures?" Dr. Han insists, "It wasn't me. I was at home the whole day, taking care of my pregnant wife." But Kumuchi confirms he saw it with his own eyes. Dr. Han is the one who killed his parents. With this solid evidence, the police arrest Dr. Han. Detective Park arrives and starts beating him, demanding to know, where is the kidnapped girl? Meanwhile, Dr. Han's pregnant wife, Kim, is in complete shock. She can't believe what's happening. Later, can a psychopath truly love someone? He explains that a true psychopath never loves anyone but themselves. Even though Dr. Han is popular and the evidence found is strong, it's still not enough to convict him. So, due to a lack of further proof, the court releases him on bail. The media is all over the place. As Dr. Han steps outside, he sees his pregnant wife standing in the distance. He walks through the crowd, hugs her, and whispers in her ear. But then Kim says something that stuns him. She says, "You're the one who built those snowmen, didn't you? I was watching from the house." Yes, she saw it with her own eyes. Han was the one who built those eerie snowmen hiding the severed heads inside. But when the police had asked, Han had lied. Kim, now terrified, asks him, "Did you ever love me, even a little?" Dr. Han smirks and replies coldly, "I never loved you. I only needed you to give birth to a child like me." That's all. Now everything is crystal clear. Dr. Han is the headhunter. With the truth finally out, the police waste no time. They arrest Dr. Han, ending his terrifying killing spree. You guys might remember that Kumuchi got lost while going to set up his night camp. In the meantime, Kumuchi's father asked someone for directions, right? The person who gave him the wrong way wasn't just anyone, it was none other than Dr. Han. So, Dr. Han intentionally misled Kumuchi's family to another place, and after they got there, Kumuchi's parents were brutally murdered. Now, here's where things get even crazier. Professor Lee is absolutely shocked when he finds out that his best friend, the so-called headhunter, is actually Dr. Han. Later on, the police take Dr. Han into another room, lock the door from the outside, and start questioning him. At this point, Professor Lee asks him about something that happened to his younger sister, Jennifer, 7 years ago. Can you guess what happened? Well, it turns out that Jennifer was pregnant, and during that time, she discovered that Dr. Han was actually the headhunter. She tried to report him to the police, but before she could, Dr. Han killed her because she tried to get rid of the child she was expecting. So yeah, now it's clear Dr. Han is the one who murdered Professor Lee's sister 7 years ago. But what's really terrifying is how Dr. Han talks about it with a creepy smile, completely unbothered. At this moment, the police burst in, break down the door, and arrest Dr. Han. But here's something else: Dr. Han's wife is currently pregnant. Now, the big question is Dr. Han just a psychopath? Or is he truly a serial killer? If that's the case, then there's a high chance that his unborn child could also inherit the same psychopathic traits. Professor Lee later decides to conduct a DNA test on the unborn baby, and when the results come back, he sees something shocking: the baby carries the same psychopathic genes. Kim, upon hearing this, feels extremely heartbroken, but also furious. She starts thinking, no matter how painful it is, she has to get rid of the baby. However, as she's leaving the professor's office, she sees another pregnant woman. Kim starts talking to her, and it turns out that this woman's husband also worked with Professor Lee. As an experiment, Professor Lee had conducted a DNA test on her unborn baby as well, and guess what? That baby also carried psychopathic genes, but despite knowing this, the woman decided not to terminate the pregnancy. She believed in that 1% chance that her baby could still turn out to be a good person. Hearing this, Kim starts reconsidering her own decision. Instead of focusing on the 99% possibility of her child becoming a psychopath, she chooses to believe in that 1% chance of goodness. Meanwhile, we see Dr. Han sitting in his prison cell, casually reading a newspaper. But what catches his attention are multiple gruesome murder reports. Since he's locked up, he can't go out and kill people himself, so now he's getting his thrill just by reading about these killings. Now, the story jumps back to an incident from years ago. Professor Lee is investigating a mysterious parcel. When he opens it, he finds a mouse inside. This freaks him out completely, but why is he so scared of a mouse? Well, as the series goes on, you'll start to understand why. Remember at the very beginning of the show, I mentioned a little boy watching a snake eat a mouse with a strange fascination? That boy's name is Jayhun. Fast forward 5 years and we see Jayhun in school. He barely talks to his classmates because, well, he's a really strange kid. One day, his classmates tell their teacher that Jayhun killed the class pet, a rabbit. The teacher questions him, asking why he did it. Jayhun calmly replies that he thought the rabbit was pregnant, and he wanted to confirm it. So he cut it open. Even while talking, Jayhun is constantly scratching his hands. The teacher asks why he's doing that, and Jayhun simply says that he has a lot of anger toward his classmates, but since he can't take it out on them, he hurts himself instead. That's when the teacher realizes Jayhun is not just an ordinary kid. Later, Jayhun's father is called to the school, and after hearing what his son did, he's furious. He takes Jayhun home, beating him up along the way. Now, Jayhun is filled with even more anger toward his father. That night, Jayhun decides to poison the pet fish in their tank because he knows his father loves them. His younger brother catches him and asks, "What are you doing? Are you trying to kill the fish?" Jayhun casually replies, "Yeah, I'm really mad at Dad, but I can't do anything to him. So instead, I'm killing the things he loves." But he doesn't stop there. After poisoning the fish, he takes their pet dog, drags it outside, and kills it too. Later, when his father returns home, he's devastated to find his beloved fish dead and soon realizes that the dog is also missing. Eventually, he discovers that Jayhun dumped the dog's body into the river. At this point, Jayhun's father knows for sure his son is a monster. His younger brother even confirms it, telling their father everything Jayhun did. In a rage, Jayhun's father beats him mercilessly inside their home. Now, Jayhun is even more furious at his little brother for snitching. So he takes him outside, digs a hole, and attempts to bury him alive. He starts shoveling dirt over his still-breathing brother, fully intending to kill him. But just at that moment, Kim arrives. That's right, Dr. Han's wife, Kim, steps in and violently pushes Jayhun away. She grabs him by the neck and starts strangling him. While doing so, she tells Jayhun, "I should have killed you before you were even born." And that's when the shocking truth is revealed: Jayhun is actually Kim's biological son. But how did he end up with another family? And how did Kim know exactly where to find him? Well, there's a much deeper backstory to all of this, and trust me, it's way more intense than you think. That's how the first episode of Mouse ends. If you want to find out what happens next, whether Dr. Han somehow continues his killing spree even from prison, you'll have to watch episode 2. So what are your thoughts on episode 1? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Insight on YouTube. Click the bell icon so you'll be notified as soon as episode 2 drops. We will meet again.